Good evening and welcome to Suits and Laterals. I am Chris Green and I'm joined by Jeff Rich as always. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing great. Last week of the season, last show of the year, man. I'm hyped up, man. I'm ready for a solid 2016.
Absolutely. 2015 coming to an end. And, you know, could there be anyone else who's happier about 2015 coming to an end than Peyton Manning?
Oh, what a rough year he's had. Not what he signed up for when he went to Denver. You know, when they drafted Brock Osweiler there in Denver, that they had to say that there's a future that goes beyond Peyton Manning. Not sure that we expected it to happen this quickly, or really not sure that this isn't the right time for it. Brock Osweiler v. A.J. McCarron on Monday Night Football. What a game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a great game. And you know what? They, it was quite an ending too. I mean, you had the Osweiler gets down 14 to nothing in the first half. Bengals are looking great. AJ McCarron, he's making everybody forget about Andy Dalton, but Osweiler once again leads the Broncos back. They're driving down late in the fourth quarter, and I mean, they could have pulled it out if Brandon McManus hadn't shanked that field goal attempt.
Oh, that's just the thing. That could have ended their season, quite frankly. He misses that kick. They lose that game in overtime, and it was in doubt because they only kicked the field goal. So you had McCarron driving the field for a potential game-winning touchdown, even in the overtime period. McManus made good on his miss at the end of regulation. The defense held up. Defense played great. The Monday Night Football announcers were praising Carlos Dunlap and the Cincinnati defense a lot, but man, that Denver defense is number one in both the run and the pass for a very good reason. Pressure on the quarterback, great coverage. Bradley Roby continues to grow into his role as a shutdown NFL cornerback. Chris Harris Jr., just not enough good things to say about the Denver Broncos. And, had it gone another way, we're talking about them losing next week, the Chiefs winning, and Denver potentially missing the playoffs altogether.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, the way this year has gone for them, I mean, it may have been a little bit apropos for that to happen, but it was funny too. I mean, you're talking about the ending there, and that game could have actually ended twice in the overtime. First, you have AJ McCarron getting hit, the ball flies up in the air. I mean, it was a questionable call. I think it could have easily been a fumble and ended the game. I think it was just one of those plays where it was just too close and they didn't want to end the game on it. And then what do you know? Very next play, he fumbles the snap. DeMarcus Ware recovers it, and ball game.
Right. Let's go back to that Derek Wolfe clear recovery on the AJ McCarron. AJ McCarron gets hit by it was Von Miller on the right arm as he's cocking back to throw the football. His arm moves forward, the ball goes forward. As far as I'm concerned, I don't buy into this empty hand nonsense. If you're attempting to throw the football and the ball sails forward, it is a pass. The interpretation in the NFL is a little bit strange. Jerry Austin, who does the officiating consulting for Monday Night Football, came on and said, "Hey, that's an empty hand. The fingers pushed it forward. He didn't control it to throw it." And I'm making arm signals as if we're not on a podcast and you can see what I'm doing for visual aids here. But, I don't think that should have been a fumble. I think that ultimately the call was right. And, if it wasn't, hey, justice served on the very next snap.
Yeah, what do they say? The ball don't lie. But,
Yeah, but there's so many people. There's so many people out there, Chris, that interpret the game and watch the rules, and they make they make a liar out of the football.
yeah. I mean, there's two things in the NFL that are probably the most debated plays there is. There's that particular play. Is it a fumble? Is it a forward pass? And then is it a catch? I mean,
Yeah,
you could debate those till you're blue in the face.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of things that ultimately comes down to, if you want to wrap it all up into one nice tiny little gift package, it all relates into what is a fumble and what's not. I mean, I guess the catch, because you could have a catch and a fumble, you could have an incomplete pass, you could have a pass caught, but it's illegal touching because the receiver went out of bounds before the play, controlling the ball to the ground. It's a lot of it's ridiculous. I think I keep going back to that Calvin Johnson play in Chicago on the opening week a couple years ago when a guy goes to the ground, clearly controls it all the way to the ground and puts the ball on the ground. That was ridiculous. The Des Bryant play was ridiculous, but them's the rules we deal with, and that's what we're left with at the end of the day. If it's called a fumble on the field, it's overturned. The offense retains possession, as was the case with Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. So be it.
So two other big stories that came both before and after this game. Number one, was it late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, this report from Al Jazeera, of all places, linking Peyton Manning to HGH. Now, as if Manning's play on the field this year hasn't been bad enough to push him towards retirement, this comes out. I mean, there's been so many denials and stuff. I mean, who knows what to believe is actually true. I mean, I would say at this point it looks like the story is pretty much false, but I don't know. What do you think about this? Does this tarnish his legacy? I mean, is this just a matter of, it's Peyton Manning, he's the golden child, blah, 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 or is that little buzzword of HGH, does that tarnish his legacy forever?
I don't think so. I think we're so close to the end that it makes me think of Ray Lewis before the Super Bowl a couple years ago, what turned out to be his final game, and the deer antler spray story that came up in the weeks in between the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl, and how it just went away. I mean, we don't even talk about it. We don't talk about the two dead bodies in Atlanta in 2000 either, but that's a whole different can of worms. As far as Peyton Manning's concerned, he's been recovering from an injury. There are justified uses of it. Of course, it's a banned substance, but unless he's caught by the NFL, this is kind of even if true, this is kind of like the Belichick stuff all coming out, revealing everything that was Spygate. If we do reveal that there were performance-enhancing substances, at least in Peyton Manning's time in Denver, does it taint his time with the Indianapolis Colts and everything that he did there as well? A name that I think of, especially on the subject of HGH, is Barry Bonds, another guy that we say was good enough without it, but how much did it enhance his numbers towards the end of his career?
Well, yeah, I mean, and we're not talking about hitting the ball 700 feet or 600 feet versus throwing a touchdown pass an extra 10 yards. I mean, it's a completely different use. And I mean, at the time too, I mean, the guy was coming back from some pretty, tragic surgery stuff. So, I mean, nobody knew if he was ever going to play again. So whether he did it or not, I don't think it ever was him on the field using it. So I don't even know if you could say it was a performance enhancer in this case. I think it was more, even if he did or use it, which I still don't know that he did, I would say it was anything. It was just to help him be able to play again.
Yeah, does this go along the lines of, does it matter that the package was allegedly shipped to his wife? I mean, kind of reminds me of, our favorite Cleveland Indian, Chris Perez, having marijuana mailed to his dog in Ohio. A little bit different circumstances because you can justify HGH in certain instances. As an active NFL football player, you can't, and they get tested year-round, is my understanding, so there's really no break from it, but, to recover from the surgeries, he's had shoulder problems, I don't think HGH does anything for the plantar fasciitis, but, I'm in wait-and-see mode. I'm not anxiously waiting to see the gotcha or the hammer drop on Peyton Manning. He's a sympathetic character. It's kind of weird. You have your alpha. You have your clear alphas like Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez in baseball, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. I think you can add Cam Newton to Aaron Rodgers to that group now as well, where getting them is a little bit different than getting a practice squad player or a backup defensive lineman, which is usually where most of these cases take us. I mean, we read about suspensions of guys on our own team that we've never even heard of. So, the fact that it's a big name, it's a name on the marquee, it's a big gotcha, it calls into question a lot of recent NFL history. I mean, I get the buzz around it, but I've got to see facts. I've got to see a little more. I'm not questioning the journalistic integrity of what they do over there at Al Jazeera. I'm not familiar with them. I'm going to just treat them as a news source, but I need more details. I need more proof. And if Peyton Manning walks away from the game and we don't hear about this again, I think that we could assume the worst. But if if he fights it, if we fight to get to the bottom of it, to get the truth, I think at the end of the day, Peyton Manning's name will be relatively clear. There's always going to be a few tinfoil hat wearing hangers on, but it's my belief right now. I could be proven wrong, and I'll be happy to admit when I am proven wrong. If I'm proven wrong, that this is a big deal if it's true, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a huge deal. I think it's more, and because he hasn't been playing, I don't even know if it's that big of a distraction for the Broncos either. So, but moving on, I think the other big news that kind of came out after the game last night is A.J. McCarron, who's already replaced an injured Andy Dalton, says that on that final play of the game, he may have messed up his wrist pretty bad, and apparently he's supposed to have an MRI today. So now the Bengals are already kind of faltering, especially after that loss. They're down to the 3rd seed, so they're going to be playing in the wild card round. Right now, I believe that is going to be against the Jets. So, I mean, if A.J. McCarron's hurt, number one, I don't even know who their backup is at this point, but no Andy Dalton, most likely, unless they get to the next round. Are they going to be one and done again?
Well, I think that they're going to run into Houston in the first round because whatever division champ, whether it's New England, Denver, actually I think New England clinched the bye, but whether it's New England, Denver, Cincinnati, whoever gets that 5 seed is going to play the 4, which is the division champ coming out of the AFC.
Well, the Bengals
South.
are the 3 seed, so
3. So 3 would play 6.
They would play 6. Yeah, which is the Jets right now.
Yeah, I mean a wild card game against the Jets. I mean the Jets are hot too. Don't forget that the Jets and the Chiefs are both very hot football teams, and their records creeping up on the the quote unquote contenders there. The teams that have been contenders all year. So I think that's a scary situation. Here's something that I look at when I saw A.J. McCarron starting a week ago against San Francisco again on Monday night against the Denver Broncos. That there's not that much of a gap from 1 to 2 on the Bengals depth chart. I don't think Andy Dalton's really that good. I think that they've got a ton of weapons. They've got the thunder and lightning with Bernard and Hill, even though the running game hasn't worked well of late. Getting Tyler Eifert back on the field is going to be a big deal. Of course, he's got AJ Green, Sanu, just tons of weapons there. And Marvin Jones as well. Tons of weapons there for Cincinnati. Anybody could play quarterback, and if that ends up being Keith Wenning out of Ball State, who's got experience playing in the cold, it could be interesting. But I don't know that there's that much of a drop-off from Dalton to McCarron, and I'm not sure that there's going to be that much of a drop-off from McCarron to Wenning. But a lot of that is just the fact that I think that Andy Dalton has gotten such undue praise over the last couple of years. He's really proven nothing other than the fact that he's good enough to start for Marvin Lewis and a Bengals organization that's still a freaking joke.
That's definitely one way to put it. So speaking of the Jets play the Patriots this weekend, and this was a big game for the Jets because Pittsburgh, the Jets, and the Chiefs are all fighting for their playoff lives. And we kind of figured that the Patriots may pull this out, but the Jets go in there. They kind of took it to New England. I mean, New England came back and tied it, but then they get into this overtime period. And this is my nomination for one of the 2 bonehead efforts of the week. So New England wins the toss, and Matthew Slater, the Patriots, points in the direction of, we're going to defend that. And so the Jets get the ball, they drive down, they score a touchdown. When is it ever...
Wait. The real gaffe was that he didn't even get to pick his side because he chose to kick. Because when coin toss at all levels, it's the same. Winner of the toss gets to decide whether they make the choice, so they can defer the choice altogether, and then they have the choice of whether they want to kick or receive, or whether they want to defend the east or west or north or south end zones, whatever it is. But you don't get to choose. You only get to choose to kick or receive. Once you choose to kick or receive, the other end of the field to the end of the field to defend is up to the losers of the coin toss. But Slater screwed it up because they should have defended the wind. If they truly wanted to get the ball second, they should have chosen the wind, but he chose to kick. And when you choose to kick, you forfeit your option to choose the end of the field. So, the Jets are already receiving the football, and they got to choose their end of the field. Now, I've read that nothing about their touchdown drive to win 26-20 was wind-aided or anything like that. But, it was a Bill Belichick decision. Matthew Slater, asked him several times, are you sure? Are you sure this is what we want to do? And then he went out and screwed up the verbiage of what you're supposed to tell the referee when you win the coin toss, that we want to defend that end of the field, and then the Jets would have the option to kick or receive, and obviously they would choose to receive in that situation, unless they also wanted the ball second. But Todd Bowles goes with conventional wisdom. He takes the ball. They drive down the field, and they get a touchdown on the Patriots. I mean, I think the Bill Belichick said we should at least hold this team to a field goal, and Fitzpatrick and the Jets offense proved them wrong.
Well, exactly. I mean, here's something you got to look at. Did nobody learn from Marty Mornhinweg? I mean, when he was the coach of the Lions, you never give the ball up in overtime, even with the new rules. I'm sorry, you just never give up the ball. You take the ball, you go down, you try to score. I don't care how good your defense is. You don't give the other team the option to win the game without you having a chance to have the ball. I don't agree with that at all. I don't care how smart of a coach you are.
Especially when you have Tom Brady in your corner, it doesn't make a ton of sense. It's I was surprised to read. I was reading in Peter King's Monday Morning Quarterback that it's worked several times in recent history, like going back to '08. It's worked twice. So and a lot of that has to do with the teams on the field and things like that. But at the end of the day, you have the option to get the football with a touchdown wins the game. You got to take the football there.
Yeah. Absolutely. So moving on from that game to the other bonehead nomination of the week. So you had the Redskins and the Eagles playing for the division pretty much. And end of the first half, it's a very close game. Redskins are in their 2-minute drill driving down the field. There's 8 seconds left. I think they're on about the 8-yard line. Kirk Cousins gets the ball, takes a knee instead of spiking it. Now, Washington had a... go ahead.
We've seen boneheaded stuff like this, especially with clock management, spiking the ball on fourth down, stuff like that. But this was, this was pretty egregious, and it could have cost Washington their division. I mean, the way that we view the consequences when we get to week 16, week 17 of the season, we're talking about one little play, McManus missing the field goal on Monday Night Football. That could have reshaped the AFC playoffs. And especially in a division that's as winnable as the NFC East, the fact that a team like the Washington Redskins ended up winning it, you look at that Cousins play. If they'd have lost that game by a score because they couldn't kick a field goal at the end of the half, that's problematic. As it turns out, they win, 38-24. So it's kind of a moot point. But at the same time, this is one of those things where you look at, you got the number 2 overall pick, and that there's a lot of other drama involved with Robert Griffin III. But you've put your faith in this guy that you drafted in like the 5th round, the same year you drafted Griffin, and you have to look at him, man. If I'm the Washington Redskins, and they're going to get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. If I'm the Washington Redskins, if I'm Daniel Snyder, and you know how volatile he is about things, I look at a guy like Kirk Cousins. Is this my quarterback of the future? Can we trust him? This is an isolated incident, but what if it starts becoming a habit where there's just little subtle things that cost you 3 points at the end of the half, that cost you a win in a season, you go 9-7 and you're on the outside looking in it, as opposed to being 10-6 and being a wild card team.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. They got very lucky that didn't cost them the game, as you said. But let's kind of move on now. So. There's a couple of big games this week as far as the playoffs go, and you called these games. One of them, didn't really have a big playoff implications, but it could this coming week. But the first game was the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens. I didn't give the Ravens a chance in this game, but you told me, Baltimore beat them once. I think they have a good chance to beat them again, and lo and behold, Baltimore beats Pittsburgh again. How is this even possible when the Steelers are fighting for their playoff lives? And the Ravens are on cruise control. They're starting their 3rd or 4th quarterback of the year, and Ryan Mallett, who's cut from the Texans because they just didn't want to deal with his act anymore.
Yeah, I mean, give it up for the Ravens for getting the job done. That this isn't a team that cares about their draft position. This is a team that's going to go out and try to win football games every week. John Harbaugh's not on the hot seat. Nothing crazy is going on in Baltimore, and they've got that stability. And even though their record doesn't really speak to it, this is still a winning organization. And tell me where to turn in my Cleveland card for giving Baltimore any credit, but they're a legitimate 5-10 football team. They're a legitimate third place team in a division where the Browns occupy fourth place forever and always. But this is a team, no matter how bad they are, from week to week, you have to prepare for them. And I don't get how Pittsburgh could blow the barn doors off an Arizona Cardinals team earlier this season, and then they can't hold serve against the Baltimore Ravens. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the National Football League, man. Any given Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. In the any given Sunday, anything can happen. And speaking of any given Sunday, so you have the Carolina Panthers with their 14-0 unblemished record. As I've questioned all year whether they were that good or not, and they've proven me wrong at every point. But they go in to play the Falcons. They're trying to finish out this perfect season. I was already debating. Well, will they go for it in week 16? You're like, hold on there. They're playing the Falcons, and even though the Falcons haven't looked very good, I still think they have a good chance to win. And sure enough, I mean, the Falcons, it was a close game, but I think the Falcons really did take it to them, regardless, even when it was a 7-point game.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina wasn't all the way in that game. The 7-point margin made it interesting at the end, especially Carolina gets two chances inside of 3 minutes, and Atlanta steps up on defense. That's a tough place to play, the Georgia Dome, and they won't be playing there much longer. But there's a reason. I mean, if you look at Matt Ryan's record, I don't have it in front of me, but even when the Falcons aren't very good, even when they're like 7-9, they're still like 6-2 at home. I mean, it's it's a tough place to play. It's a division, it's a division opponent, and Atlanta wanted to get their pound of flesh from the 38-0. It was a 38-0, the beatdown they took a couple weeks ago in Charlotte. So things in the division, things have a way of evening themselves out. A lot of you'll look at a lot of these 10+ win teams, and they're only like 3-3 or 4-2 in the division because there's just such familiarity there.
Yeah. So the other impact of this loss means that, Arizona went in up against Green Bay this week, and Arizona blows out Green Bay again, 38-8. So now Arizona's sitting there at 12-2, and they win. And now with one loss, they go into this final week, and they still have a chance to get that number one seed if Tampa Bay can upset Carolina. Do you foresee this happening?
That's a division opponent. I mean, the same rules apply with Tampa Bay when they take on a Carolina team, as is the case with Atlanta. I mean, Tampa, it's kind of funny. You look at the NFC South. Atlanta got off to the hot start, and they've just stunk it up until they beat Carolina last week. But New Orleans probably at 6-9. They finished 7-9. That's right where a lot of people would have had them. Tampa Bay. If they win this game, they finish 7-9. What an accomplishment for Lovie Smith. I know that we get obsessed with the playoff teams and everything else when we're looking at Coach of the Year, but I got to give that team a lot of credit. I mean, that was a one-win team. They added a quarterback. They added a quarterback that still has a lot of room to improve. I mean, he was the number one overall pick for a reason, and I think that you could justify it looking at what he's done versus what Mariota's done in Tennessee this season. But it's a tough division. I think that Tampa Bay's got a good chance, and no rest for the ones beaten there in Carolina. That they've got a tough road ahead. They're going to have the bye week after week 17, so they'll get a chance to regroup, and then they'll play the winner of the wild card, a winner from the wild card round. But I still think Carolina's a great football team. I think they play great defense. They lost in a game that they gave up 20 points. They turned the ball over too much, and they ended up paying for it in the loss column.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Panthers, I think this is actually going to be a good thing for them. They won't have the pressure of trying to complete the undefeated season like the Patriots did going in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So I know what people are going to say, well, they didn't get the perfect season, but I think this is going to benefit them in the long run. I think they'll be able to hold serve against Tampa and keep a number one seed, and it'll just set up some good matchups going down the road. I mean, at this point, I still think Arizona is probably a little bit better team of the two, and even if they end up the number two seed, I still like them even if they have to go into Carolina.
I totally agree there. I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to win the Super Bowl. I do live in Phoenix, but there's no bias behind that statement. They're just
Mm-mm.
what
They're
they
an
did
excellent
to
team.
what they did to Green Bay, what they were able to do to Seattle. They're going to get another. They're going to get a great tune-up game, even if there's no playoff posturing involved. They're going to get a great team in the Seattle Seahawks coming into their house to end the season. So look for the Arizona Cardinals. Look for a lot of compelling Week 17 matchups.
Yeah, I mean, you have Vikings Packers for the division. I mean, who would have thought that? I mean, the Vikings kind of really come on this year. I mean, they played better last year, but this year they've really come up against it. And I mean, Green Bay has been up and down all season. So the winner of that game gets the division. The loser will play the Redskins, I believe, for the wild card round. So I think you definitely. I think you may actually want to lose that game. I don't know if you want to face the Seahawks in the first round.
Yeah, it's tough to beat a team like that 3 times in a year. So that would be that's an interesting setup. And Bruce Arians doesn't coach like that. He says we're going to go out there and we're going to win. We're going to win football games. The way that their defense is playing, man, I don't know that the one man show in Carolina can compete. I like the Cardinals. This week against Seattle at home at 4:25 Eastern time. The Seahawks are going to have to go on the road in the playoffs. They know it already. There's not really a lot of drama other than figuring out who gets the division title and the home field advantage in the playoffs between Minnesota and Green Bay. I mean, Minnesota's quite the surprise team this year too. A lot of it is that Green Bay kind of regressed back to the pack and kept them in it, but what the Vikings did to the Giants, on Sunday night, even without the services of Odell Beckham Jr., I mean, that was complete domination. And I don't think that number 13 would have made a difference in that game one bit.
No, definitely not. So let's move ahead. The intriguing matchups this week. We've kind of talked about a few of them already with the Vikings and the Packers. You got the Seahawks, Cardinals, Buccaneers, Panthers. In the AFC, really, I mean, it comes down to the Steelers and Browns and the Jets and the Bills. I mean, who would have thought that the Steelers-Browns game would have any meaning? I mean, it's at this point, the Steelers on the outside looking at the playoffs. They have to beat the Browns, and the Jets. If the Jets win, they're in. But, Rex Ryan going up against the Jets, he's going to do everything in his power to stick it to them and knock them out of that playoff spot.
Yeah, Rex has been a lot of talk. I'm kind of off the Rex Ryan bandwagon. I thought Buffalo would be a lot better than an 8-8 team or 7-9 team, which will probably be as long as the Jets take care of business on Sunday in Buffalo. But I think that Browns Steelers game is the one that creates the most chaos because the Browns are still kind of in position for the first pick if Indianapolis can't take care of business against the Colts, and it's funny that we've got Indianapolis can't take care of business against Tennessee. Rather, it's kind of funny because Browns fans will remember back to 2007. There was a Colts-Titans game at the end of the year that the Browns desperately needed the Colts to win, and Peyton Manning played one series. Jim Sorgi came in. I think that they ended up losing that game like 13-7, and the Titans took the Browns' playoff spot. So, looking at it that way, Tennessee could just lose this game, get the number 1 overall pick. Indianapolis wins, and they only need 8 other things to happen to sneak into the playoff picture. But the Browns at home against the Steelers after a promising performance against the Kansas City Chiefs. Steelers coming off that loss to the Ravens. I don't think this one's a gimme for Pittsburgh by any stretch of the imagination, other than the history that you look at with Ben Roethlisberger and the Browns in must-win situations.
Yeah, I mean the Steelers Browns game. I guess it could be a close game. I mean, historically, this has always been where the Steelers blow out the Browns, and if history proves true, this would also mean another Browns coach gets fired because it always seems to happen this way after a Steelers big blowout loss. Hopefully, history doesn't repeat itself, but we'll see what happens there. I mean, the Tennessee-Indianapolis game, that's going to be. I mean, Indianapolis is going to be using the quarterback that was on the practice squad for the Eagles, I believe, going into this week. So, I mean, and Tennessee is going to be on their backup too. So, I mean, that's going to be probably one of the worst watchable games ever, but it does have some intrigue to it. And like you said, think Rex is all talk. I don't see the Jets losing this game. They've been very good this year. I just can't see them falling on their face at the end. And you know what? Speaking of the end, this is the end of our podcast for today, but it's not the end for us for all. We'll be back again next week in 2016, and you can find us on the fourlights.fm network. So please subscribe. Join us. Jeff and I will be back to discuss the playoffs and talk about Black Monday and see who didn't survive. So any final thoughts, Jeff, for you?
Final thoughts is that Packers Vikings game is going to be really interesting. The Vikings had a chance to take care of business when Green Bay was down. They might be down again coming off that loss to Arizona, traveling out west, playing in front of a lot of their own fans in a road stadium. But I think the Packers hold serve at home. If this game wasn't at Lambeau, I wouldn't be so confident in it. But I think Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, and that Packers defense get the job done against the upstart Minnesota Vikings.
Sounds good to me, Jeff. I'm Chris Green, and for Jeff Rich, this has been Suits and Laterals. Have a good new year, everybody, and we'll see you next